I don't know why, but you are watching the Madness Comic Network. Are you mental?
Hey.
What, I left y'all speechless?
Is it
You're
your
mine, brother. Take it.
You did. I did enjoy the intro.
Okay.
Yeah, the intro was pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Damn Show on the Critical Blast podcast. I'm your host, Damascus Mintzmeyer. Our regular host, R.J. Carter, is at a remote cabin in Michigan translating a rare copy of the Necronomicon Ex Mortis. I'm sure that'll turn out okay. But don't worry. Hopefully, he'll be back tomorrow. He hasn't been consumed by some sort of demonic creature. In the meantime, I'll be interviewing the team of the new Crucifixion Press anthology, Shoot the Devil, Martyr's Militia. We've got returning guest editor Eric Postma on hand, along with 6 of the book's contributors, and we'll be spending the next hour or so discussing pulp fiction, the future of genre entertainment, and just why shooting the devil is so devilishly fun. How is everybody tonight?
Excellent.
Excellent.
Great, thanks.
Right. Well, it's nice to have everyone here, and some of you may have been here before, some of you are new to the show. To refresh our audience, I'd like everyone to introduce yourselves by answering this question, which is, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it? Let's just go clockwise around here. To my right. Let's start.
Yeah, I guess that starts with me. I'm Dan Gaynor.
That's right.
I'm a career writer and editor, journalist, and God help me. And I started writing science fiction fantasy about 10 years ago. I'm working on a book for Canon Publishing in their excellent Fate Wars universe. And I know Eric, and I'm really thrilled to be part of this because it's really just a fantastic anthology.
Excellent.
I'm Jamie Faye Torkelson, and I guess you could call me a bit of a hobbyist. I hold down a day job so that on the weekends I can write pulp fiction. The Shoot the Devil is probably one of the story I contributed was probably one of the best ones I've ever written, and I know I'm up. It was some. There's some really good ones in here that I have been reading. I love them. I think that this is a good volume, and yeah.
All right. Next is let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Hi, I'm Xavier. Is it me?
Yes.
Is it me? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Hi, I'm Xavier. Currently, I work in retail, but I've also been a teacher, and I've taught ESL and other subjects in Canada and abroad. The Shoot the Devil is my very first published writing. I mostly do creative writing in English and in Catalan, and well, yeah. And I'm hoping to eventually get some stuff published in Catalan, but Catalan editors are very expensive.
Oh.
That's it.
That was impressive for a first published story. That was really it was intense. So,
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yeah. In my case, my story is thanks. My story is basically from an unpublished Catalan novel that I took basically 5 chapters, compressed it into a 7,000 word short story with a lot of help from Ginger. Yeah, his editing was really great and very helpful.
Thank you.
right. Who's next? Let's see. Well, let's talk to Ginger next. Let's go around that way, clockwise here.
I am Eric Postma, commonly known online as Ginger, for what I hope are obvious reasons. Although I'm getting a little snowier as the years go by. I have worked in nuclear power in various capacities my whole adult life, but I enjoy editing kind of on the side. I've worked on a number of different books that have been published, and has those who are in the know. Shoot the Devil came about thanks to a conversation I was having with Declan Finn, where we just kind of,
Yeah.
joking around. Is like somebody said punching demons. I'm like, that sounds like an anthology. And well, if you know Declan at all, you don't just throw out random ideas with him. He will make sure they happen. and well, here we are on volume 3.
Yeah. I remember Declan on the previous show. He's quite the character.
Oh, Declan is definitely a character. Yes, he is a full glass of personality.
Absolutely. So next, let's see. Who do we have next? Next to Eric, we've got.
It's either me or Joseph, depending on.
I think you're up, Frank.
Okay.
Yeah, Frank.
Hey, I'm Frank Luke. I've been writing for a little while. I have a couple of things out in indie things. I've really been enjoying writing Shooting for the Devil. By day, I'm a software engineer, and on the weekends, I'm a staff pastor and do the Rural Rangers at Church, which is a great boys ministry. And this set of stories just came up, and I've been running with it.
Yeah, you've had stories in all 3 volumes, if I remember correctly, right?
No, just this. I got in on the second one.
Okay. Who's next? Joseph's, I think, next, right?
Yeah, I'm Jason McHouston. I'm a writer and illustrator of weird fiction, and I was surprised to be included with these guys. I mean, I was like, I'll take a shot, and then lo and behold, I got in. So I'm just thrilled to be here with everybody.
I'm Shannon Baker.
Let's see.
Yep, sorry, I jumped in.
No. You can go.
By day, I fight cyber criminals. I work for a cybersecurity company and help organizations secure their data. And then by night, I try and write cool stories. Every once in a while, I succeed. Most of the time, I just get rejection notices.
I understand that. You gotta soldier on through those. All right. So my next question, this is probably more for Eric than anyone else. You were touching on your mission statement for the Shoot the Devil series. What was the central ideal behind compiling this particular volume?
Well, this particular one, do you want me to go over like the basic theme of the whole series real quick? Or? Okay. The basic idea for the whole
cover that for the audience, because they may not remember.
Yeah, is just tell stories of more or less regular people facing some sort of supernatural evil and punching it in the face, shooting it, whatever. Just kicking its ass, basically. And this particular volume, this actually was Michael Gallagher's idea again, which, again, shout out to Michael for all of the great...
Yeah, hey, Michael, you're watching.
With handling the graphics on the cover and making great promo materials for everybody throughout all 3 volumes. He's been a fantastic help. But this was Michael's idea of recruiting some people who are specifically lesser known, even in the indie sphere. People who, like Xavier over there, who are publishing for their very first time, or maybe it's their second or third, whatever. Just people who are, generally speaking, lesser known, and giving them a shot to get something out there so they can say, hey, this is what I've written. This is the kind of material that I can produce. These are the kind of people that I've been included with, and at the very least, hope to give somebody a tiny little step up. And I have to say, everybody delivered just fantastically. This one, I mean, if I haven't said so already in email, everyone delivered just fantastic stories. And in a lot of ways, this is my favorite volume.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. This is, I even said in my review, this one is probably the strongest of all 3 volumes, for sure. I
Especially
think we
as
have
an
2 newcomers
anthology,
here.
I really liked
Mm-hmm.
like every single story in. Well, I've loved every story in all 3 of them, but I specifically with the second one because we talked about last time how that one all the stories are very similar. I love them all individually,
Right.
but yeah, almost everyone went with space demons,
Space demons.
and I was like, and the whole to create a sci-fi themed volume, which everyone
Mm-hmm.
everyone delivered very well. Just for some reason, all but like one author went with space demons, and I was like, well, okay, cool. They're all good stories, so like that's good.
It's
But
kind
as
of
an
a
anthology,
logical conclusion.
this one is better just because there's more variety again.
Yes, that's what I liked the best part, was it was so much variety in the settings and characters and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 2 newcomers here. I would like them to introduce themselves. I think we have the Joseph Kellogg and I think James. It's hard for me to read the tiny little print at the bottom and so small. I'm doing this on my phone.
Oh,
But
yeah.
let's have Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's have Joseph introduce yourself. I like to start off my questioning with who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it?
Yeah, I'm Joseph Kellogg. By day, I do environmental compliance in the steel industry. I've got a handful of short stories floating out there and a few self-published novels. And I guess I was the token non-space demon story in this one.
Well, no. That was the previous volume. That was volume 2. That was full of space demons.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's see who we got. We got James, I think.
Yes, my name is James Piles. I actually just retired from my day job at the beginning of the month as a technical writer for the IT department. And since about 2005, I've been a textbook writer for computer networking and desktop support topics. Since 2019, I've had about 60 short stories and novelettes published.
Wow.
And
Great.
yeah, I know it's no one's more impressed than I am, or shocked. But and I actually was amazed that I'm in all 3 volumes of this anthology. And unfortunately, in volume 2, I did also write about space demons. Sorry about that.
Like I said, they were all good stories, so it's not like I could say no.
Yeah, they were. They were all good stories. Speaking about our stories, let's go around the circle again and have discuss what gave you the inspiration for writing that particular tale. Let's start with Dan.
Well, my dad was in the fire department, and my first memory of my father was saving somebody's life.
Oh, wow.
Firefighter families, they go to fire. It's I guess everybody, like if you're an athlete, you probably take your kids to work. Well, so do firefighters. But in their off time. So my father used to have one of those fire monitors sitting around the house. When I was like 2 or 3, there was a fire. We went to it. I was with my dad. It was a huge old frame house. And at one point, we're standing there watching, and my father shoves me into the arms of some guy he knows, and he goes running off, and he and another guy grab a firefighter who was laying injured on the ground and drag him away as the chimney or the house started to fall. And my brother and I, we investigated this. There is a helmet in some sort of micro museum in Baltimore. My dad, worked. That is the crushed helmet from this firefighter. Pleasantly, his head was not in it. So, all my growing up, I lived around heroes. My dad was 3rd generation firefighter. My brother Tom retired as a captain in Boise, 4th generation firefighter, and his oldest daughter for a while was 5th generation firefighter in Alexandria, Virginia. And
Wow, that's cool.
the reason why I say heroes, we bandy around that term a lot in our society. You know, he did something heroic, or he's a hero, especially athletes. The people who are heroes, firefighters, police,
Putting their lives on the line.
The people who, the day before, you put your life on your line, and then you get up the next day and do it again. It's one thing to do something absolutely insane and risk yourself, and then go, never doing that again. You know, it's another to do it every time. And that kind of insanity where you're doing it, risking your life for people, property, and pets, is inspiring. So when I think about fighting demons, I've always been very frustrated. There's not a lot of material out there about firefighters. Not a lot of fiction. There's some romance novels. There's I think it's Dennis Smith's book, Report from Engine Company 84, I think it is. 82, 84, one of those 80 numbers. That became famous. There's one series that's sort of like done like Master and Commander, or they're like Horatio Hornblower, where he works his way up. But mostly there's not, particularly in science fiction and fantasy. So when I was trying to think of, let's see, fire demon, well, who the hell fights a fire demon? You call him a fire department. And so, the people I was writing about, I'm writing about people I saw my whole life. The neighborhood we lived in when I was a kid was all firefighters and policemen, all of them. I mean, just if something happened, if there was like somebody hit a car on your street, like 20 gentlemen would run out of their house. It was all the men who were home. It was all, like I said, our next door neighbors were both cops. My dad was in the fire department, and so I tried real hard to represent that. It's funny, I was telling, my father's deceased several years now. I was telling one of the guys he used to work with, we're Facebook friends, and wonderful guy. And he was telling me he remembers his dad is almost like a second dad to him. And we always considered him, this firefighter, like a fourth brother, And so these are the people you work with. Shift work is insane. You work 10 hours on, 2 days off, 14 hours on. And my dad used to work in 36 Engine in Baltimore, which was the busiest firehouse in the city. And so that was his job and his life. And I want to always write about heroes. And so I was thrilled to be part of this, and Eric did a fabulous job. I can say this as a career editor. When you're dealing with somebody who does a good job as an editor, it makes everything better. So I'm just thrilled to be part of this. And the graphics, oh my gosh, that not just the cover, but the book. Fantastic. I mean, it's frustrating to be part of something and not have good covers. It just really popped. So I'm proud of everybody here. I could not be more thrilled to be part of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you actually had ever been a firefighter, because I noticed when I was reading through that story, like the details of how like firefighter life was and inside the firehouse and everything like that. As a reader, I found that very impressive. So knowing the background now it adds another dimension to it. That's very, very interesting.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's, as a career journalist, you always try to put the skin on of somebody you're writing about, but this is an easier skin to put on. It's one thing to write, about people you kind of know this way, hands off or at a distance. It's another thing when you used to go to the firehouse all the time, and my dad was in the fire department, I think 36 years, and he worked his way up from a firefighter all the way to battalion chief, which is there's above them there's one deputy chief, and I have unkind words to say about deputy chief because I heard my father was anti-bureaucrat his whole career, and then the chief of the fire department. So there is one character in my book. There's a battalion chief, and he's very much drawn from sort of a collection of guys I would see on the fire ground, old old and grizzled. And I guess that's who ultimately my dad became.
I see. That's excellent. Let's move on to Jamie. Let's discuss your story. Where was tell us what it was about and where the inspiration came from. I really like this story too.
Thank you. So my story starts probably about 10 years back when I got really interested in medieval history. Through a long series of soul searching and all sorts of shenanigans, I ended up dedicating my life to Christ and becoming a baptized Catholic. That was in 2023. And all through those 10 years, I would say stuff about, St. Joan of Arc that, and to be clear, the story I wrote is Glory Hound. I would have these kind of, so I would say like, oh, she was just a confused peasant girl being used by the French and stuff like that. And so when it came to time to pick my confirmation saint, I had fallen in love with Therese of Lisieux. And I really had a kinship with her. And I learned that Therese had a real deep connection with St. Joan. And I just kept feeling like really bad about all of the horrible things I had said about St. Joan in the past. And right up until my baptism, I started this story, the first draft of Glory Hound. Didn't even have a name, because Glory Hound actually came to me, the name came to me like, I don't know, maybe a month before I submitted it. But I just became really interested in this idea of the saints as heroes. You know, they are heroes, and they personify in many different ways the Christian virtues. And Joan is perhaps one of the best to describe like that feminine version of courage. And that's always something that I think, especially nowadays, doesn't get what do you call it, properly explained. Everyone wants a lot of people do the female hero that's like a man. You know, it's just a gender swap.
Right.
Well, Joan is this interesting figure who puts on armor not because I think there's a general like, not because it's like she wanted to, you know, but because that's what God needed her to do. And so I kind of had this whole I knew some of these very interesting folk stories, like the Beast of the Gévaudan. We have lots of historical evidence. You know, we do know that there was some type of wolf killings, and there's tons of different theories. And one of them that I had heard was serial killer. And I thought that'd be really interesting to write about a serial killer who dresses up like a wolf. And then I learned about, especially in medieval art, you'll find a lot of those dog-headed men. I think it's the Journeys of Mandeville. He talks about them for a while. And they are literally like people who have animal features. And there's been talks of like, oh, that's what the Canaanites used to look like, you know, and obviously that's folklore. And so I took those names and I kind of went like, yeah, I'm going to make a connection here. And I'm going to have this deeply Christian hero come to who is an outcast, come to an outcast, and they're going to fight something. They're going to kill the beast. And I actually used the character in French folklore. Jean Chastel is the man who killed the Beast of the Gévaudan, who in the folklore story is, yeah. So Jean Chastel actually has, I believe it's on, is it Mount Mouchette? I can't remember. I can't quite remember.
Mm-hmm.
There is
think
a
so.
memorial to him for killing the Beast of the Gévaudan, and famously, the French resistance hid on that same mountain to fight Nazis and things like that. Unfortunately, they were communists, but you know, we can't all be perfect. So I kind of just wanted to draw all these things together, and even like Saint Guinefort, if you look him up, he's also a folk saint who is a dog. You know, there's a whole lot of things going on, and I want to take that story and I want to write other examples using Christian saints, telling Christian folklore, and really reminding people, especially myself, there are heroes in Christianity. Christianity is a heroic religion.
I like the. I like that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sorry, you're breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I love the action in your story. It reminded me of the movie Brotherhood of the Wolf. You ever seen that? Which was
I
also
have it on
about
my
the
Netflix to watch.
That's a good one.
I'll have to check it out. No, but thank you for your kind words and everything.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on to Xavier. I touched upon your origin of your story a little while ago, but
Sure. The origin of the story is that it was basically a fanfic. Well, it was like not so much a fan fiction, but like to set in the same universe as an author who wrote a really good post-apocalypse, and I really liked it because I find that most of the post-apocalypse tends to be a bit nihilistic. This one wasn't. This one had a lot of Christian, but it was explicitly Christian. It was about this knight who has this power armor and he goes around fighting demons and rescuing people in a post-apocalyptic America. And so what I did is I wanted to do the same thing, but I thought, let's move it to another place. So I chose Spain. And then I decided, okay, I'd always wanted to write in Catalan, and I figured, and I'm unhappy with the direction that Catalan fiction is going, and that was years ago. It still is. So I decided to write. And then I threw in other things like genetic manipulation, that there's not so much a prophecy, but that the young woman who's being rescued, the Lord has something in mind for her, and that's later on, and then that's going to be revealed at the end of the novel that I had. It's revealed, and that she also has some guardians who I drop hints as to who they are, and then at the end they reveal themselves, and it's just mind blowing. I'm writing it like a sequel, a bit of a sequel to the short story for if ever there's another anthology that reveals a bit more who the guardians were and a little bit more what her role is, and and I made it and it's more like Shoot the Devil, but this time a little bit on the Declan Finn style. Things blow up and things get shot up a lot. And there's also lots of rescues. So that's basically the story.
I like that. So let's move on to Frank. Snake Wise. Frank talk about his story. What's it about and what gave you the idea for it?
Well, my story in here was A House Divided, taken from the statement by Jesus about the demonic, that a house divided against itself cannot stand. That story is about an Allied Earth chaplain who is just a few months into his first deep space assignment. As part of a family on-board experiment, a few officer spouses and children have been brought to serve on to live on the Lexington with their fathers and husbands. Now, Thomas's wife, they've only been married a couple of years, and she's not so sure about one of the officers who spends a lot of time in counseling with Thomas. That officer is the only alien on the ship, and she feels alone. She's also an exotic beauty, and that's what makes the chaplain's wife all nervous about it. Now, in the first story, Ship Without a Sail, the chaplain and alien fought those space demons, and in House they find evidence that those space demons weren't confined just to where they fought that one, and that a prior space empire had fought the demons and locked many of them into other prisons. They traveled to a colony world where that evidence was found and set out to make sure that the prison stays locked. And the demoness that they had fought the first time escapes from her little jail that they had on the Lexington and comes down to bring her army back. The inspiration for that was several years ago. I started writing I called it High Frontier at John Wright's suggestion. It was I said to him, I want to make Star Trek great again. And he said, call it High Frontier. So I started writing out, just a little bunch of snippets and story ideas. When Eric put out the call for Shoot the Devil 2, I thought, hey, that'd be a great time to finish one of these. But Ship Without a Sail wasn't even started at that point. And but after I wrote it for there and got the note about the second or the third, I asked myself, how many of more of these stories can I do with Chaplain Thomas Malcolm? Now, I came up with Sail because I know several military chaplains, and military chaplains don't feature highly in science fiction. I wanted to do that, but I thought Sail was going to be a standalone. But I've written up an outline for a 6-part series of these short stories. Divided is the second. I finished To Cleanse the Leper just before Thanksgiving, and then I finished Magi of Christmas Past, which is not part of the 6 stories, but it is a High Frontier, and just before Christmas. And those other 4 stories, To Cleanse the Leper and the 3 after it, are all about the Elothian Empire, which is that ancient star empire that they find evidence of. Thomas is just a normal man who is not born to heroics, but steps up when needed. It's like sci-fi, high tech. The Allied Earth is admittedly more jingoistic than Star Trek's Federation, and but it's just been fun to write.
I love the connections. When I was reading the story, and I was like, wait a minute, I think I recognize this character. And then I went back to Shoot the Devil 2, and I was like, wait a minute, I like that. I like that it was like a sequel to it, that it carried on through. That really was pretty cool. And I like how you handled Alien. That was your leader. That was really. You did a good job on that.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Who's next? Jason, I think, is next.
I wrote Lost Paradise. I originally created Connor McKay as a sort of modern day Conan, which is the reason he's 6'7", but after writing half a dozen stories with him, he's more or less morphed into a modern day Solomon Kane, I guess. And but originally, I loved Conan stories, but the ones I think I liked the best was the ones when he would lead a group, like on a mission or a treasure hunt or something. And I hadn't written Connor McKay story where he did that kind of thing. And so I was like, well, I want to write one where I can show off his military background. And at the time, I guess I wrote this. There was something in the news, and I don't want to get your channel in trouble, but if you read the story, you know that there's a pretty blatant reference to a certain island. And I was like, I want these guys to take care of it. So that's where the idea came from, was Connor and a bunch of guys are going to go take care of the most evil thing I can think of. And so, and throwing them up against a gang of these evil people isn't enough. I got to throw a Category 5 hurricane and a demon in on top of it. So, try and
really ratcheted up the. You were stacking the odds there against the heroes because you got first off, they're waiting ashore. There's 100 dudes with machine guns that they know are there waiting for them. Plus, there's an incoming hurricane, and they're like, okay, we've got to get in and out in X amount of time, or we're screwed. And it makes for some very thrilling action. I really like that. And I love Robert E. Howard also. So I'm definitely with you on the Conan and Solomon Kane stuff.
Well, thank you.
I love that feel to it. Let's see. Let's do one chance. I write your what your story is and where the idea came from.
So, first off, I apparently have a problem with demons because I will start out a Western and have an Indian sneaking up on a cabin, and instead of, settlers or bad guys, it's chupacabras. Trying to kill. And I write a story. I start off a story about a nerd who, gets the girl in the end, and he has to rescue her from a demon. So this is apparently a trend for me. And so when I saw the announcement for the anthology, I thought, hey, this is going to be great. I got a chance. And I had just actually attended a small unit tactics class. And there was a guy in there who may or may not resemble the main character in the story. He was just an everyday guy. He was a pipe fitter, had a family, worked for a living every day, but the guy was awesome. He had never served in the military, but he was running circles around the law enforcement guys that were there, and even some of the military guys that were there. In terms of his skill, his dedication, his focus, just everything. He was just like a rock star. And so I had this idea that, okay, we're how can I get this guy into the story? And so I figured, it's a militia, okay, but why does a militia fight demons? So I kind of set this in sort of a post-apocalyptic world where the demons are taking over, and there's a small area for humans to take refuge, and it's their job to defend and to stand against the darkness, no matter what the cost. So that's kind of where it came from, and I'm pretty happy with where it came out. Hopefully other people like it.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was very good. I like the action. It had an action movie feel to it. Like it really did. I really enjoyed that. Okay, let's see. Next we got. Let's see. Joseph's next.
So my story was Fire and Thunder. The core concept of it, about a rocketeer fighting some sort of thunderstorm, came probably about 15 years ago. I wrote a draft of that story, and it's very different and much worse. But the idea had stuck in my head, and I kept wanting to come back to it. It was originally going to be in like sub-Saharan Africa, and then I started looking into legends of jinns and things like that. And it ended up moving around the continent a lot. But yeah, it's so long ago that I did the draft, I don't think I can trace what exactly put that idea in my head.
I love the Rocket Man aspect of it. They don't give it almost like an alternate reality. Like it was set in World War II, but it's almost like an alternate World War II with Rocket Man. I thought that was really cool. That's like a Rocketeer.
Just a little bit of divergence there.
Okay, so let's see. Last we got Dave.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to mention to Dan, my father was a firefighter in the Air Force for 40 years. So it was a fairly major coincidence. He never took me on the job, so I never saw him work, pulling bodies out of burning airplanes or anything like that. But he told me a few toe curling stories over the years. As far as my story, I wrote Book of Names, and I'll admit that I wrote it for a different anthology originally. They chose not to buy it. So when the submission call came for volume 3, I thought it might be a good fit. Unfortunately, they agreed. But I got the idea from a novel I read, it was a 2013 novel written by an Australian author named Max Berry called Lexicon, where the whole premise of the novel is that a special language with unique words spoken by especially trained people has power in a literal sense. I mean, you can actually kill and destroy and do all kinds of creative and destructive things with it. I thought, well, okay, we talk an awful lot about, the word of God and the names of God. Let's take that and magnify it and twist it around in a little way. My story is more allegorical. It's not, nobody is literally called a Christian in the Book of Names, but the themes are I hope, obvious. So you have the character of Griffin, which is the name he goes by in the present, who has for the past 2,000 years been collecting the little bits and pieces, the syllables, the minutia, to put together the name that it presumes the name of God, but a specific name, one that's not obvious or hidden, or that is hidden rather. And so he's on the verge of finding the last little bit of this, and he's always been pursued by a group of demons who call themselves Legion. I know that's not particularly original, but I thought it captured kind of a certain drama, so I chose to use it. And they have been using him to find the name for 2,000 years as well. I mean, they could have easily have overwhelmed him and killed him, but they thought if they did that, then maybe somebody else would find the name they weren't aware of. So they are both taking tremendous risks to find the name, Legion so they can destroy it, and Griffin so he can actually say it, because once he says the name, then ideally it brings about, at least it alludes to bringing about a messianic age. The other issue for him is that over 2,000 years, he's been collecting demonic names, and we all have different names that we call ourselves. In Judaism, for example, you might have your given name, but you also, if you're religious, you have a Hebrew name, which may or may not relate to, what people call you on a day-to-day basis. Now, that name isn't particularly hidden, but what if, according to certain magic traditions, we all do have a true name, one that we keep hidden to ourselves, because if it's known, it could be used against us. And Griffin uses those names against the demons. The only reason they can't use it against him is because he doesn't have one. Now, the danger for him is that because he doesn't have a name, one can be imposed upon him if he's left vulnerable. And this night is a tremendous night that he's facing in a deserted building, which I based rather obviously on the famous Bradbury Building in Los Angeles, which has been used in a number of movies and television shows, and I really love the architecture. So he's trapped in a building with a bunch of demons and one woman who supposedly is this coincidentally, but as it turns out, she has a very special role, which could either solve his problem, help him find the last syllable, or it could destroy him. And you really don't find out until the last, and I won't tell you how it ends up. We already read it, but the audience probably hasn't, as to what occurred. And because I really hate close-ended endings, because life doesn't stop just because the story stops, I do leave it open for further possibilities. And I have no plans for writing a sequel because I don't know where I would go with it. But I like the idea, and I know that a lot of stories, not only in volume 2, but probably in all 3 of the volumes, are more aggressive than mine. That is, they have basically Christian Federation officers in space shooting demons with phasers. And I thought I wanted to do something that was more subtle than that. Demonic, warfare operates on a number of levels, most of the time not with swords and actual bloodshed, but with all of the shadowy figures that are surrounding us, the things we you know, the reasons that we are afraid of the dark, so to speak. And this is what Legion has brought to Griffin. And because it's a Christian story, I wanted it to have a happy ending, and it did. It just didn't have a final ending, which is true because we don't have one, not yet. We know we will, but we still have a ways to go. There's a crack open on the Messianic Age, but the door is not fully open yet, and it has not completely consumed our world. So we're still waiting and doing our part.
Very fitting story to end the volume on.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
I thought it was a very fitting story to end the volume on. With your story. So.
Well, I'm
any questions for everyone. Oh, I'm sorry.
Damascus, you mind if I give a quick thing for the two guys that aren't here?
Yeah. Absolutely.
One was Nicholas Wolf, who was hanging out backstage for a little bit. His story was basically, I think of it as kind of Vikings in space. It was very,
I love that.
very, very easily the darkest of all of the books. And it was so dark, I was like, oh man, I really liked. I decided to include it because at the end of the day, the bad guy is defeated, and it was just so well written, I couldn't not have it. And
I love the future society that he depicts there.
What was that? I'm sorry.
I said I love the futuristic society that he depicts there. I love how well thought out it was.
It was very well thought out. It is like this very Viking-esque tribal society, but they're traveling through space to they don't know what. It doesn't really seem like they have a particular goal. They're just kind of existing, and every now and then they come across some sort of ancient vessel or artifact that they then go and explore, and it never goes well. And this time was no exception, and it was an extremely terrifying entity that just consumed people and cause them to lose their minds. Is very Event Horizon-esque in a way. In fact, that's a good way to think of it. Event Horizon plus Space Vikings, and that's what you get. And it was really, and talking to him, sounds like he's got a lot more stories played in this universe. I'm definitely looking forward to it. And the other one was Steven Johnson, which is another sort of alternate reality one, where it's like an alternate World War I, where you've got trench warfare, but you've got elves and orcs and dwarves and vampires and the whole 9 yards. And it's I've read a couple of his other stories in this universe, and it's really fascinating, really interesting the way everything plays out with all the different abilities that all these different characters have and how they interact with each other and the way their different dispositions spiritually affect how they can even act in this world. And it again, a shout out to Johnson, because his world is very well thought out, and like I said, there is some stuff out there with more of his work in it. I don't know how available it is anymore, because independent publishers have a tendency to kind of come and go, and things can get lost in the mix, unfortunately. But if you have the ability, if you can find some more Steven Johnson's work that he's already done, definitely check it out. And listening to everybody kind of describe their stories again, there was, as it turns out, a theme that kind of ran through most of the stories, and it was a lot of people went with a very military type feel to it. Whether it just focuses on a couple of characters like Xavier's, or you've got like a team like Jason and Joseph, and that is, I thought it was very interesting the way that kind of played out. Also, I noticed there were almost every story featured characters that could easily carry on into another into another story within those worlds that they've created. Like even Dan with Dan with his firefighter, which could easily stay a standalone thing, could also turn into a thing where that firefighter winds up, for whatever reason, he just finds supernatural troubles.
It's funny you say that, but because you mentioned Declan earlier, but with Tommy, he's gone the cop route. I think usually people go the cop route for that, and that has been bouncing around in the back of my head because, I think we honor the heroes that we write about, and the idea of having supernatural firefighters kind of appeals to me. So that's kicking around. They may resurface.
Why not put out hellfire with holy water from fire hoses, right?
And I mean, the other thing is everybody notice how much we all focus on Christianity.
Yes.
If you're going to have demons, if you're going to have evil, there's a great line in Dusk Till Dawn. If evil exists, then then there really is a God. And that, I think all of our characters, some of them might be more religious than others, but they all come to terms with that. And one of the characters in my novel, sort of like, he started reading the Bible and read, and sort of basically became convinced that what they were fighting was not, was not natural, but was supernatural.
Right. And as you say, you brought up Dusk Till Dawn. You can always have a priest handy to bless the tap water and turn it into a weapon.
Yeah, I love that movie.
In a different story that I wrote, they fill water balloons with holy water and a thickening agent, so it becomes what they call either holy water grenades or holy napalm.
I love it.
At the
Oh.
Well, and that works out because there isn't a single there isn't a single story in this volume that I wouldn't want to see more of, either the world or the character or the specific characters.
The very first, my introduction actually to Critical Blast at all was actually through this book called The Devil You Know, an anthology in 2020. And the story I committed to it was called Night at Satan's Palace. And it was about these two old guys in their 70s who visited a strip club in Las Vegas named Satan's Palace. Okay? The strippers there are actually demons trying to open up a portal to hell in the basement. And these two old dudes, and there's like an exorcist. There's an exorcist in there who knows that the strippers are demons, and he's already like infiltrated the place. But these two old guys have to team up with this exorcist to fight the demonic stripper and get the hell out of there before they can open up the portal in the basement. So you're talking about holy water. The exorcist guy, he has the syringes inside of his jacket filled with holy water that they have to stab after the strippers to reveal their true demonic nature so they can kill them. And there's a part where one of the old guys, he takes it and he shows it like a dart. And he's like, well, I guess all those nights at the rec center weren't wasted. He's like, hold up. He's like one of the strippers that blows up. But, so, I like that.
I'm stealing that.
So let's talk about what authors and writers of books influenced all of you, growing up. Who are your favorites? Let's start with Dan. Who was your literary idols growing up? Influenced you to want to be a writer?
When I was a kid, two authors really spoke to me: Andre Norton and John Christopher. And I channeled John Christopher though, because John Christopher wrote about apocalypse, and I love writing about apocalypse. I love reading about it. God bless it. He wrote YA apocalyptic fiction before ever, I think anybody even envisioned it. It's like author, reader, perfect match.
What about you, Dave?
Well, when I was younger, it was always, J.K. Rowling and Gail Z. Martin and Catherine Lasky. I really loved them. But now that I'm older, I've gotten really into William Gibson.
Oh, yeah.
And Robert Howard.
Good choice.
Yeah, those ones I think I read. I've read every Conan story multiple times, and I love Neuromancer. It's one of my favorite books. And then I guess Robert Herbert. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, Robert Herbert. Dune.
Oh, Frank Herbert.
Yeah, Frank Herbert. Thank you.
Yeah, Dune's a masterpiece right there. What about you, Xavier?
It is.
Who are your influences?
And it's a complex book.
Yeah. Who are your literary influences growing up, Xavier?
It's a little bit difficult because I have a lot of authors, and since I read in several languages, I guess if I were to say which ones were the most influential, I'd say Cervantes, because I was learning to read Don Quixote in Spanish, and then he mentioned a book that intrigued me. It's called Tiren Lovlang, and it's basically the first modern novel. I managed to get my back when I visited my grandparents. One of the major publishers, Edición 62, edition 62, had what back then was called the best works of Catalan literature, the MOLC. And I finally got to read in Catalan, and it just blew me away. It was just the most dynamic novel I'd ever read. And so that really influenced me. And in a way, I guess it's always been trying to not copy, but inspire the vividness and the vitality that I've always liked. And then I've got, I also grew up with the Hardy Boys. I just found out from one of the mutuals that the 1923 editions are now in public domain, because when I grew up, I had the 1977 edition at home, but at school we had the 1958. So I read both. I had no idea that it was 1927, so I'm very curious. So it's tough to sit because, like I said, because I read in so many languages that I have a lot of literary. But Cervantes and Martyr are two of them, and then there's some contemporary authors that I also like as well, both English and non-English. So those would, I would say, my inspirations.
Fascinating. What are you, Frank?
Oh, growing up, if I could get my hands on a Peter David novel, Orson Scott Card or Weiss and Hickman, I was devouring them. I read everything from Weiss and Hickman up until about the War of Souls trilogy. It just went cold with me. But other than that, I've liked all of their stuff. Orson Scott Card, The Ender's Game, the Tales of Alvin Maker, I liked. The Shadow, the Bean series that went alongside Ender's Game. These days, my go-tos are, a few years ago, about 12 years ago, a friend of mine introduced me to H.P. Lovecraft, and he made him humorous. His tellings of the H.P. Lovecraft stories were humorous. And so I decided to start reading them, and I'm like, this is not humor, but it's good. I also just love to read anything I can get my hands on from John Wright, and also like Chesterton. But my favorite short story of the last few years, it's in the Box Day Selenoth series. It's called Opera Eterna Vitae, Song of Eternal Life, and I cannot help crying every time I read that. I've read it 5 times, and I still cry every time.
Wow, that sounds interesting. What about you, Jason?
Well, as a kid, I was pretty much make mine Marvel. I was a comic book kid, so uh,
Yeah, me too.
That's where I started. But then I moved into the fantasy stuff with Lloyd Alexander's Friday and Chronicles, and then from there, quick jump to the Lord of the Rings, and then while I was in high school, I discovered the Call of Cthulhu role playing game, which leads directly to Lovecraft. And since I already knew Conan from the comics, that led me to Robert E. Howard and all of his stuff. So I've gone basically from comic to fantasy to pulp, and now I'm pretty much addicted to historical fiction. Bernard Cornwell is probably my favorite guy right now to read. But, I read everything. I try to, anyways.
Yeah, I was a comic book kid too. That's why when Frank was talking about Peter David, I read all of his. I love Peter David's comics too. Like all of that Peter David.
Yeah.
What about you, Shannon?
So, Heinlein was really the first author that got me reading something other than history or biographies. I picked up Starship Troopers in the school library, and I have read that book more than I've read any other book ever because I cannot stand reading a book more than once, but I've read that somewhere around 5 times. and every time I get like a totally different take out of it. The reality of the matter is that it helped shape my basic outlook on life because I was such a young kid when I picked it up. That was huge. The next author that really grabbed me, and I think Jamie, you were the one that said this too, Frank Herbert's Dune. That is another book that I've read more than one time, and another book that every time I read it, I get more or different out of it, and see it from a slightly different angle as I'm a little bit older and maybe wiser, but probably not. And so those were really big for me. Robert E. Howard. I read every Conan that I could get. I read Al Murik. I haunted every used bookstore on the planet to find one that I didn't have. Sometimes I bought them multiple times because I forgot I had one. So that was really big. These days, I'm pretty general. I read a lot of people. The one that surprises me most is Louis L'Amour. I was toying with a Western, and somebody said, "Hey, if you're going to do a Western, you got to understand Louis L'Amour." And I'd always kind of written Louis L'Amour off as sort of a pulp author, and I was blown away. His word pictures were incredible, and so yeah, he's pretty high on my list. And I really have only read one of his westerns because I picked up the Sacketts because they told me that was the ultimate Louis L'Amour, and that's cool. But yeah, it was set in England.
You started at the
In
beginning.
the 1600s, and I spent the first chapter of the book thoroughly confused.
Okay, Joseph, what were your influences growing up?
I grew up reading a lot of like classics, like Time Machine,
Yeah.
that kind of classic
H.G. Wells,
stuff. And then as I got older, I realized that I was actually reading the kids' abridged versions, and I was heartbroken. I went through phases. I was on a big Agatha Christie kick for a while. I had a Russian literature phase in high school, and these days I'm reading a lot more pulpy type stuff. Although if we're talking which books we've reread the most, I think top of my list would have to be The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton. I don't know if I could claim it as an influence, because it's so different from anything that I ever write, but it's definitely one of my favorites.
That's pretty cool. Let's see, James.
Well, first of all, growing up in the 60s, I was a comic book kid too, all the Silver Age Marvel stuff. So I consider myself pretty lucky having been able to access that. As far as when I was a kid, Edgar Rice Burroughs was my entry drug into science fiction with the Barstoom series. And I also, in junior, it was in junior high, Andre Norton's Time Traders series, E. Doc Smith's Skylark, Robert E. Howard Conan. As I started growing up, I moved into Harlan Ellison, Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein. And even though Rod certainly isn't known for his written works, because his writing on the Twilight Zone is so fantastic and he understood human beings so well, he's like, if I could go back in time and study writing under any author, it probably would be him. As I am an adult, I really can't stand to read the same book more than once in most cases, just because there's so many of them and there's so little time, and I'm already 70. But there are certain works I read every so many years. Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, George Orwell's 1984 for obvious reasons, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and of course Frank Herbert's Dune, all seem to be so timeless and so amazing that you really can't read them just once and expect to understand what they're trying to tell you. And that's just scratching the surface. I started reading science fiction and fantasy when I was 9. I just haven't stopped.
Frankenstein is an example of a book that none of the movies have ever captured, like Frankenstein, like ever. You know, you're watching the movies, you're like, they're good. You read the book, it's like a completely, totally different experience with the way that it's told. And that has always struck me. Like, the book is so much better than any of the films could ever be.
Yeah.
So, what's next for all of you? Like, what are your next projects? What do you got cooking coming down the pipeline? What about you, Dan?
Is that for me? I couldn't understand. Did someone else catch that? Because I'm just having mic problems.
Audio problems. I'm going to say, what project are you working on next?
What am I going to do next? Yeah, so I had very great opportunity. I was at LibertyCon last year, and I got working with the people from Canon Publishing. So I'm working on a book in their shared world, Fae Wars. And if you were to basically describe what kind of stuff I like to read, I love portal fiction. I absolutely adore portal fiction. People from our world going into another world, something from another world coming into ours. Which I think that covers everything from Cthulhu to, the second Fantastic Four movie. So it's like, it's a wide range. But I used to be a big time D&D player, and early on in the D&D era, people would talk about something called Panzerfaust, where you compete basically humans with World War II weapons against trolls and orcs. And I've always been fascinated about that, so it's natural that I'd be trying to work with John Holmes and Lucas Markham on that. I have some other ideas. I was talking to them at MarsCon just the other day about what I would like to do next after I finish the book. But as a journalist, deadline is paramount. And I am a big believer in making my deadline. I've given them, when I think I'll have it done, and I will have it done. As Eric can tell you, you got to do it. It's got to make deadline. And so, I still have my day job. I work part-time for Fox Opinion. I write and edit for them. In fact, I had a piece that went kind of viral today, a new thing where writing about the craziest news stories of the month. And it was real popular, so I'm very happy about that. And I see the message that's here about Doomsday Recon. I love Doomsday Recon, so a shout out to a friend of mine who wrote that. And I'm semi-retired, and so my goal is this is how I'm going to spend my retirement: reading and writing. Very little arithmetic.
What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I actually have a short story that's going to be published in the spring issue of Kirsova. I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. Anyway, and then I will just keep working on short stories, and I'm currently working on I guess you'd call it a novel. That's sort of a take on Conan the Barbarian, but I'm telling two different stories kind of at the same time. One is going to be swords and sorcery, and the other side of the story is very classic fantasy fiction. So the female character has all the magic and the sorcery going on, while the male character is the kind of barbarian savage, and they are kind of forced together into this team, and they go on adventures together, and that's kind of the big thing that I'm working on right now. But I will keep trying to get short stories published.
Sounds good. What about you, Eric? What's next for you in Shooting Devil? Is it going to be Volume 4?
That is a very, very good question. Because after I finally get it out the door, I'm exhausted. Not so much because the book itself is necessarily so much work, but because it's like doing this is like the seventh thing that I do. I in addition to a full-time job, I still have 5 kids living with me. I homestead. I do a lot of teaching and stuff at my church. And then I edit on the side. So it's like the thing I'm able to make time for when everything else is done on a given day. So I was thinking I might take a break, but then again, listening to everybody and everybody talking and some of the ideas that everybody has, I'm like, it kind of gets me excited to want to do another one sooner than I was planning. Which is the way it has worked every single time. After the first one, asked about a second one, like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Then Declan's like, well, are you going to do it? Like literally 2 days later. I'm like, yes, I'm doing it. Please stop hitting me. And then this one, Michael actually threw out the idea of the Martyr's Militia. I'm like, gosh, that's a darn good idea. I guess I'm going to have to do that one. So I think there will be a fourth one. Stay tuned as far as when it will be. In the meantime, I'm finishing up editing a story from a guy I know back up in Michigan, and I might publish that under my label. I'm not sure yet. It's a very different thing than Shoot the Devil. It's much more meditative and philosophical in nature. The author said it's heavily influenced by Dostoevsky, and it really does come out. And when he's really leaning into that is when he's at his best. So we'll see. We'll see if I put that one out under the Crucifixion Press label, or if I send him to just somebody else's because it might fit better. I don't know.
What about you, Frank? What do you got when you have coming in the pipeline?
What have I got in the pipeline? Well, I'm being pretty happy with To Cleanse the Leper. I'm going to be starting on To Set the Captives Free soon, and that'd be the fourth story in the Chaplain's series. And in that one, they find Kasey's cousin. Kasey's the alien on the ship. And she's mentioned that her cousin is in trouble. They happen to find her, and meeting her named Chop. He's the shady supply officer on the Lexington. guy who kind of works in the gray market, and meeting her pushes him onto a redemption arc. I'm also, but right now I'm working on my 6th story for the Fantastic Schools, that anthology that Christopher Nuttall and Jaji Lamplighter Wright edit. My first 3 stories there were about mages, and stories 4, 5, and 6 have been about a clerical school. That was, does a training quest have wheels? Then Son of Light, Son of Darkness. And I'm working on Performance Anxiety, where Bart, the junior cleric who served as comic relief, now gets to play a serious role, and he has to write an original music composition for his advancement, and he has stage fright. But it is serious because he dual classed as a bard, cleric bard, because a cute blonde playing the flute made eyes on him, and so he decided, hey, I already play the guitar, so I'll dual class. And she gets wounded, and he sets off on a quest to break the curse on her.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Jason? What do you got? What are you working on?
Well, I just finished another Connor McKay story I got to find a home for. And after that, I've got a historical fantasy novel pitched to a new publishing company. And if they pass on it, I'm going to self-publish it hopefully around October. And then after that, I've got a high fantasy meets slasher horror novel that I'm hoping to get out in the spring. So that's where I'm at right now.
That's a unique combination I've never heard before.
See, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping I'm breaking new ground, but I'm sure somebody else has beat me to it. But we'll see. Yeah.
What about you, Shannon? What do you got? What are you working on?
So I feel a little like Sisyphus right now. In addition to writing, I'm also starting my own publishing imprint, Full Armor Press, or publishing. Haven't figured that out yet. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be doing an anthology. I've invited all these guys to submit to it. I've got one. Thank you. It looks really good. That is tentatively titled God and Guns, Blaze of Glory. So similar concept. Hope I'm not stealing that from you, man. But looks to be a lot of fun. I will not be putting a story in that. I'm just going to be playing editor on that one. It will be my first time. So I'm sure that I will fail miserably. I've got a short story coming out under that imprint next month on the 19th. That is a prequel to the series that I'm writing, which is Archangels, which is common, ordinary, everyday people who have the ability to see demons among us and decide to do something about it. And then that story arc is going to build through. I've got Michael doing the cover art for those. I'm looking forward to that one. I'll be revealing that cover art here shortly. Super excited about that one. And then I had a Weird West that I had published as a serial, and I'm going to pull that. I've already pulled that down. I'm putting that together, and I'm going to do that as a novel into that imprint as well.
I love Weird Westerns. I love those. Okay, James, what are you working on now?
Well, since I've recently retired, I've been told that I really need to find something else to do besides work, to avoid going crazy. But I already had that planned out. What I didn't anticipate was that, although my grandchildren have always had a very large part of my life, they have overwhelmed it at this point, and I'm more busy now than when I was ever at work. So besides that, I've got a number of stories that are already in the queue. I'm lined up a number of open submissions for short stories that I plan to write for, and I've gone back to school more or less. In this case, it's virtual, but I feel like I've kind of stagnated as a writer. I've developed myself as far as I can go inside of my own head, and I've taken writing courses in one version or another before, but I'm going back and doing that again because I know that I'm probably a decent writer, otherwise I wouldn't be published. But I really think that I could be better at it to make better stories that people would really want to read. I've written a couple of not-length stories previously, both for the same publisher. Unfortunately, one is stuck in editing hell, and I don't think it'll ever see the light of day. And the other, they edited down to a more like a long short story, which made me very unhappy. So I'm going to continue to pursue the metaphorical holy grail, so to speak, and try to. I've got 3 ideas for a novel. So I'm hoping to take everything that I'm learning and to put that back into a longer project that I can finally present to the public and hopefully have something I can be proud to look back on.
Excellent. What about you, Joseph? Are you there? Okay. Well, let's go there. What are you working on?
Oh,
Okay. Technical difficulties, I suppose.
I'm just glad I'm not the one buffering this time.
Okay. No. Okay.
Or yeah.
Xavier, are you there? Yeah. Okay. I guess we could call that a night. That was like my last question, actually. All right then. Does anybody want to give any shout out before we go? Just like anyone you want to thank. Just anyone.
I gotta throw out one last shout out to my daughter, who again does all the cover art for these, and just her abilities continue to improve. And it's especially if you look from the first volume to the second to the third, her cover designs are always fantastic, and she's decided that dragons are obviously a theme for the cover, so she keeps coming up with new and interesting takes on that.
Oh, and the promos were also excellent. So please,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
Michael just knocked it out of the park as he always does.
Yeah, that was. But so if we're rounding up the thing, I guess we got to thank you for hosting.
Yes,
because, this is a great opportunity for all of us, and we get to talk about the thing. It's like we're all giving birth. When you create characters, you give life to people that are bouncing around your head like you're a crazy person, and but when you put it on paper or put it electronically, people no longer think you're a crazy person. Now you're somebody. Oh, now you're creative. And so we just the chance of getting it out there. We thank you very much. And the kind things that are said in the review and everything. I mean, that's what every author.
Speaking of reviews, if anyone watching is so kind as to go and buy and read Shoot the Devil 3, which you can still get it, the ebook, for just $1 on Amazon. I'm going to keep it there through the weekend, and then it's gonna go back to a more regular price of like $4. Leave a review. Nothing helps an independent author more than leaving reviews. That's what pumps it up the algorithm. That's what gets people to notice it and consider it when they're browsing around looking for something new. Take 2 minutes after you read it and leave a review, even if it's a bad one.
Sure.
Preferably good though. We like 5 stars a lot better than 1.
And I can say I'm working. I got people working on my website because I finally got to get my head out of my butt to do that. And I went back and looked at all the reviews that I've gotten and grabbed the comments that people make, and that is forever. So yes, please, gosh, leave a review.
Let's, before we go, and Xavier pop back up. What are you working on next? Audio.
I'm not sure I heard you.
Yeah, Xavier, can you hear me?
A bit. You're very scratchy, so I'm having difficulty picking up the question. So no, it's not. It's just one of those technical glitches that you have with the usual things.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I was asking what
just quickly, what I'm working on is well, I've already prepared a. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
Xavier,
sorry, is it my turn or is it somebody else's?
Yeah, it's your turn.
I think he's freezing up.
Everyone else is going.
Oh, it is my turn? Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, and the audio is sometimes very scratchy, so sometimes I can't hear properly what the question is. Okay, so very quickly, like I said at the beginning, I'm working on a sequel to Fan Latzar, and I'm going to submit it to an anthology, another anthology. I had a submission that was turned down from another one, but I'm reworking it, and I have a mutual who's a published author who's helped me with the line edits. And because I like the characters, I'm reworking it, and I'm going to try to see if I can turn it into a novella. I'm also preparing the outline for the same characters, but I want to do it in Catalan. And that's it for now. I think it's going to keep me relatively busy because working in 2 languages sometimes is a bit tiring. and interfere, and sometimes it just gets in the way of good writing.
I want to give a shout out to my friend Belle. She's supposed to be watching this show. I don't know if she is or not. She said she would, so we'll find out. And I would like to thank everyone tonight who showed up. I enjoyed talking to every single one of you. I enjoyed all your stories. It was an excellent book. I want to thank Eric for keeping Critical Blast in mind, for sending in Shoot the Devil books to us to read and review. And I look forward to having all of you on the show again when Shoot the Devil 4 comes out, because we know it's going.
Message received, Damascus. Message received.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And don't forget, everyone, head over to Amazon, check out Shoot the Devil, Martyr, Militia. And if you enjoyed tonight's show, like, share, subscribe to the class on YouTube, and that's it. The damn show is done.
Click on the tube and feel the vibe. Every show you crave right here live. Heroes and villains clash in the night. Madness Comic Network sets it right. Scroll through the list, find what you need. Epic battles and fast-paced speed. From capes to cosmic space delight. Tune in and watch your favorites ignite. On Facebook, share the thrill so grand. On X, the buzz across the land. Madness Comic Network all around. In every episode, joy is found. uploads, they never end. Superheroes and their friends catch every twist and every turn. Madness Comic, you will yearn. Stay up to date with every twist. Madness Comic, don't miss a gist. From laughter to tears, every mood. Madness Comic sets the groove. Click that button and subscribe. Catch the wave and ride the tide. Join the fun, join the craze. Madness Comic brightens days. New uploads, they never end. Superheroes and their friends catch every twist and every turn. Madness Comic, you will yearn. Stay up to date with every twist. Madness Comic, don't miss a gist. From laughter to tears, every mood. Madness Comic sets the groove. Click that button and subscribe. Catch the wave and ride the tide. Join the fun, join the craze. Madness Comic bright.